Hello and welcome back to Modern Jubilees. In a recent video, we looked through a complete report of the context of October 7th. Everyone agrees October 7th did not occur in a vacuum and that there is context. And in the last video, which I will link, we looked at the context in which October 7th occurred. In this video, I want to go through a Parliamentary Commission report from the United Kingdom. This report was put out recently, and once again, this is a heavy, difficult report to go through, and so we can do it together here as a way of tackling this, because on one's own, it is really difficult to get through this kind of material. So this is called the 7th of October Parliamentary Commission Report. It is often quoted, and so let's go straight to the source. Chaired by Lord Roberts of Belgravia. This is coming from the United Kingdom. The work is ongoing. Contents. Acknowledgements, forward, report overview. Introduction. Glossary. October 7th attacks, timeline, perpetrators, victims, previous cycles of conflict and ceasefire, Hamas's aims and plans, Hamas's weapons and equipment, the attacks, rocket barrages, border breaches, attacked communities, attacked Bedouin villages and camps, city attacks, festival attacks, highway attacks, military facility attacks. And then generally about the attacks, their atrocities, what their intentions were, and all sorts of terrible things that we'll get to. All right, it's acknowledging those who it wants to thank. You have a link to this document if you want to look at all the details. Forward by Lord Roberts of Belgravia. Holocaust denial took a few years to take root in pockets of society. But on 7th of October 2023, it took only hours for people to claim that the massacres in southern Israel had not taken place. Hamas and its allies, both in the Middle East and equally shamefully in the West, have sought to deny the atrocities, despite the ironic fact that much of the evidence for the massacres derives from film footage from cameras carried by the terrorists themselves. Though, of course, there's also much more from many other sources, as this report delineates. The present report has been undertaken to counter such pernicious views and to lay down incontrovertible proof for now and for years to come that nearly 1,200 innocent people were indeed murdered by Hamas and its allies, and very often in scenes of sadistic barbarism not seen in world history since the rape of Nanjing in 1937. On 4th of October 2024, almost a year after the attacks, Khalil al-Hayya, the most senior leader of Hamas outside Gaza, was asked by Jeremy Bowen of BBC in Doha, Qatar, "Why'd you kill so many civilians, women and children?" He replied, "We ordered our resistance fighters on the 7th of October not to target civilians, women and children. The objective was the occupation soldiers who are always killing, bombing, and destroying in Gaza. We don't endorse harming civilians. On the ground, there were certainly personal mistakes and actions. The fighters may have felt their lives were in danger. In fact, Israel unilaterally withdrew from the Gaza Strip in 2005. We've all seen how the fighters visited the houses," al-Hayya continued. "They spoke to the families, ate and drank." Pressed on this bizarre version of events, he added, "When they went into some of the houses, none of the women and children they dealt with were terrified. Those videos were published by the Israeli occupation. They weren't published by us." Asked about the taking of women and children as hostages, something even he could hardly deny, al-Hayya claimed, "One of the goals of 7th of October was to kidnap a small group of Israeli soldiers to exchange them for Palestinian prisoners. But when the IDF Gaza division completely collapsed in the face of the resistance fighters, we took a lot of prisoners. It was not our plan to capture civilians, including women and children. Yet, as we shall show, Hamas not only planned to take hostages, but abused them in the act." Specifically asked by Bowen about sexual assault, al-Hayya stated, "The orders and ethics of all Palestinians and the resistance fighters were humanitarian, were brought up according to the Islamic religion, culture, and national civilization. We protect them as we protect ourselves. Sexual or non-sexual assault have never been proven." When Bowen said that evidence of sexual assault was piling up, al-Hayya said, "I told you the instructions were clear. There may have been abnormal acts by irresponsible people, but these are just allegations." By total contrast, our report details that horrific acts of systematic rape and sexual abuse took place in contradiction to Quranic teaching, and that everything al-Hayya said was a lie, as he must have known it was. We have allowed no embellishment of the facts, which are painful and distressing enough as they are. We have gone out of our way not to include information that we suspect is true but cannot be double-checked. We have concentrated on the 2 days between the unleashing of the assault on the morning of 7th of October 2023 and the liberation of the last of the kibbutzim, and we have documented each of nearly 1,200 deaths so that future generations will not be misled about the extent and horror of the massacre. As a Gentile, I believe that it is vital to prevent the emergence of another, more modern version of Holocaust denial, namely 7th October denial. After the Holocaust, non-Jews like me owe the Jewish people nothing less. This can only be done by the kind of fact-based evidential work in this report, which is dedicated to Emily Damari, the British hostage who was held in Gaza for 471 days, and daughter of the superbly brave Mandy Damari, who our investigation teams have met in Israel and London. Lest anyone doubt the importance of showing the truth about what happened, let us remember that in the British general election of July 2024, there were several parliamentary candidates who openly attempted to justify the 7th October atrocities. Rami Rahayim, a journalist based in Beirut who appears on BBC News, also sought to question the BBC reports about the massacres. In the Oxford Union in November 2024, Miko Peled, who calls himself a radical anti-Zionist, described the murders, rapes, and kidnappings of 7th of October as acts of heroism. The Palestinian poet Mohammed El-Kurd, who has equated Zionism with genocide, started his speech by announcing that there was no room for debate and ended it by walking out of the chamber. The anti-Israel motion passed by 278 to 59 votes. After 15 months of fighting, a second ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas was signed in January 2025. Immediately after the agreement was announced, Al-Haya exposed the full extent of the Hamas ideology, that Hamas and its supporters viewed the atrocities on 7th October 2023 as a miraculous and unprecedented military and security achievement, and will remain a source of pride for their people and their resistance, passed down from generation to generation. Our report will hopefully permit people to see such denials and justifications for what they really are, a perversion of reason and rejection of human decency. We owe it to the victims and their grieving families to set down the ghastly, unvarnished truth about the sheer barbarism that Hamas and its terrorist allies unleashed on 7th of October 2023. Andrew Roberts, Lord Roberts of Belgravia, House of Lords, March 2025. Report overview. The Hamas-led attack on southern Israel on 7th of October 2023 was one of the largest terror attacks in history, resulting in 1,182 fatalities and over 4,000 wounded. A total of 251 hostages were taken, 210 were alive, and 41 were dead bodies. It was the largest single massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust and the deadliest per capita terrorist attack, with just over 1 in every 10,000 Israelis killed, and the third overall deadliest terrorist attack in the world to date. The attack resulted in over 4,000 wounded individuals treated at hospitals with gunshot wounds, grenade injuries, and burns. Trauma centers like Soroka and Barzilai medical centers faced overwhelming numbers of severe cases, treating patients whilst under ongoing rocket fire. The mental health repercussions since 7th of October, including PTSD and suicides, have led experts to classify the event as a mass trauma affecting Israeli society. Over 90% of those killed or taken hostage were Israeli citizens, including Jewish Israelis, Arab Israelis, and Bedouins. Many of the Israelis who were killed were also dual nationals. Citizens from 44 nations around the world were killed and taken hostage. The largest group of foreign victims were from Thailand, many of them agricultural workers in the kibbutzim and moshavim, small communal and agricultural villages. 17 British nationals were killed, and 2 were taken hostage. One of these British hostages was killed in captivity, and the other was released after 471 days in captivity. A total of 863 civilians were killed on 7th of October, accounting for 73% of the dead. 3/4 of the people killed were civilians. The remaining 27% of fatalities were those serving in active duty, either in the military or as first responders. Women and children account for 27% of those killed during the attacks, and 49% of hostages taken alive, 316 and 102 respectively. The youngest victim of 7th of October was just 14 hours old. Her mother had been shot while driving to the hospital to give birth, and a bullet hit the baby girl's leg while in utero. The oldest victim was a 92-year-old Holocaust survivor who was killed at Kibbutz Holit. The victims were killed through shootings, asphyxiation, choking, burning, grenade explosions, RPG, and missile attacks. Many victims were subjected to mutilation, sexual violence, and other forms of deliberate brutality before or after death. Forensic teams faced immense challenges in identifying remains due to the extent of desecration to bodies, with some victims identified months later through fragments like teeth. Hamas orchestrated and led the attack with 3,800 of its elite Nukba forces and members of Izz al-Din al-Qassam brigades invading southern Israel. They were supported by 2,200 individuals from other armed groups, including Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, and civilians from Gaza. A further 1,000 individuals stayed in Gaza to operate rocket launchers and provide tactical support. The exact date of when Hamas began planning the attack is not known, but the concept is believed to have taken shape before 2014, with official preparations beginning from 2021. In 2018, Hamas spearheaded the creation of the Joint Room for Palestinian Resistance Factions, an alliance designed to coordinate operations against Israel. The alliance included the following groups, each of which participated in the attacks on the 7th of October. Izz al-Din al-Qassam brigades, Hamas. Al-Quds brigades, okay, I don't really want to talk about these people. I have zero interest or respect for these people. Hamas, PIJ, PFLP, PFLP General Command, DFLP, PRC, Fatah, Mujahideen, and Al-Ansar. Great. Wonderful. I'm sure wonderful, wonderful people. Hamas maintained strict secrecy regarding the 7th of October attack, with the operational details withheld from most of its fighters until hours before its execution. This helps explain how it was kept secret. Only a few groups of senior leaders, including Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and Daif, the head of Al-Qassam brigades, were fully aware of the plan. Lower-ranking commanders and participants were informed of their roles just days or even hours in advance. The preparation for the attack involved extensive training, including drills of storming mock Israeli communities, breaching defenses, and rehearsing hostage-taking. There were advanced intelligence gathering and detailed mapping of the locations they would attack. And this rehearsing of things like hostage-taking is done in babies over there in Gaza. We have images and videos. Babies, small children, children of all ages. This is what they do in school. One puts a Jewish star on him, and they all start beating him, and they're training them from a very, very young age and indoctrinating them and brainwashing them really, really terribly from a very young age. So it's a terrible thing. There was advanced intelligence gathering and detailed mapping of the locations they would attack. When the militants crossed the border, they came armed with advanced RPGs, drones, small arms, and explosives, including thermobaric weapons. The sheer volume of arms was designed to cause maximum destruction. Weapons such as the Strip and Fame Charge explosive were specifically created for the attack. The explosive frame was designed to breach the border and to be affixed to home safe room doors in Israeli border communities to break in. The perpetrators documented their actions on the day through GoPro body cameras and mobile phones. They live streamed and recorded their actions, uploading them to social media sites like Telegram. Many attackers used GoPro body cameras, mobile phones, and even the phones of their victims to live stream their actions. Videos and images were uploaded in real time by Hamas and other groups to platforms like Telegram and sometimes directly to victims' accounts. This footage showcased graphic killings, abductions, and desecration of bodies, often accompanied by celebratory captions. Footage depicted hostages being mistreated, corpses desecrated, and victims in their final moments. The Hamas-led attack began with an unprecedented barrage of rockets aimed at southern Israel and the larger metropolises across the country. This was followed by 119 breaches in the border fence between the Gaza Strip and Israel over the course of the attack, and simultaneous incursions by air and sea. Okay, so the attack begins, barrage of rockets, 119 breaches in the border fence between Gaza and Israel, and incursions by air and sea. The attack began at 6:29 on the Jewish Shabbat and festival of Simchat Torah, with a massive rocket barrage sent by Hamas and allied groups. A total of 3,873 rockets were fired into Israel on the 7th October, followed by another 987 on the 8th and 9th. This triggered alerts across 498 communities and affected 75% of Israel's population. The number of rockets was unprecedented and stopped residents from leaving the Gaza envelope, an area in the southern district of Israel located within 4.3 miles of the Gaza Strip, ensuring that the maximum number of civilians remained in the area when the border was breached. A coordinated attack was simultaneously underway at the border. The attackers used drones, snipers, and explosives to disable surveillance and defensive systems. By the end of the day, the border had been breached at 119 points, enabling the entry of thousands of militants into Israel. The attack also included air and sea breaches, with Hamas using paragliders to cross the border under the cover of rocket fire, and deploying naval commandos in dinghies and fast boats to infiltrate Israel's coastal defenses near Zikim Beach. Hamas-led forces attacked 32 civilian communities, kibbutzim and moshavim, in Israel's Gaza envelope, killing 416 in a matter of hours. Of the 251 total hostages taken during the attack, 183 were from these villages. Once the border had been penetrated, the attacking forces breached community defenses and caused widespread destruction. Kibbutzim such as Be'eri, Kfar Aza, and Nir Oz were the worst affected. Be'eri and Kfar Aza experienced the highest death tolls, with 99 and 62 civilians killed, respectively. Nir Oz saw the most kidnappings, with 75 people taken hostage, alongside 7 abducted bodies. As Donald Trump said, "You don't take a dead body unless you're sick and twisted, and these people are sick and twisted." The communities were attacked by Hamas, other armed groups, and Gazan civilians. They destroyed homes, committed atrocities, systematically looted, and set fire to properties. Fierce battles ensued at some locations, with some areas only reclaimed by Israeli forces on the evening of 7th of October, and others remained contested for days. By the 11th of October, 89% of the communities in the Gaza envelope had been evacuated, displacing tens of thousands of people. Hamas-led forces also launched coordinated attacks on 3 cities in the western Negev, Sderot, Ofakim, and Netivot, which resulted in 88 fatalities. Sderot suffered the most significant casualties and destruction. Ofakim also faced heavy losses and was the deepest penetration point from Gaza, 13.5 miles eastward into Israel. The ground infiltration into Netivot was thwarted, but people were killed by rocket fire. The attacks on these cities reflected a similar brutality seen in the assaults on rural communities, including heavy civilian casualties and property damage. The scale of Hamas objectives is underscored by their unsuccessful plans to target larger cities like Ashkelon and Tel Aviv. The Nova Music Festival, held near Kibbutz Re'im, became the deadliest site of the attacks, with over 370 people killed, most of them young attendees under 30 years old. The death toll made the attack on the festival the deadliest concert attack in history. At the festival site, those who stayed were gunned down in their hiding places under the stage, behind the bar, in mobile toilets, and waste containers. About 50 to 60% did not die at the festival site itself, but were killed as they fled the attack. Many were ambushed in their cars with automatic weapons fire and RPGs, or were killed by grenades thrown into roadside rocket shelters where they had sought safety along the highway. Others were shot in fields, wooded areas, or stretches of desert as they fled the party site on foot. Hamas operatives strategically seized key junctions along Route 232, the main highway in the Gaza envelope. The highway killings took place at more than 30 separate locations, primarily at 3 major route junctions and in roadside rocket shelters along Route 232. The highway was the attempted escape route for many fleeing attacks on the kibbutzim, moshavim, and 2 music festivals in the area, Nova and Saidak. The attackers set up ambush positions at major junctions, turning the area into a confined killing zone. At the junctions and along the roadside, terrorists indiscriminately fired on vehicles and killed occupants as they attempted to pass. They used automatic weapons and grenades to target every car. Hamas gunmen and other armed groups also launched a series of coordinated attacks on Israeli military bases and outposts in the Gaza envelope. More than 150 soldiers were killed and dozens were taken hostage. The attack on Nachal Oz base accounted for a third of these casualties, with 50 soldiers killed, including 15 unarmed female field observers and 10 more taken hostage. The simultaneous assaults on the bases not only inflicted heavy losses on the IDF, but also exacerbated the devastation in the surrounding civilian areas. Bases that were supposed to act as the first line of defense for kibbutzim, moshavim, and cities were rendered ineffective. This allowed the attackers to continue their rampage across the region with minimal resistance. Reinforcements were delayed, and communication networks were disrupted by deliberate sabotage, further compounding the chaos of the day. Civilians and non-combat personnel seeking refuge were caught in the crossfire. Rescue operations faced significant challenges due to the sheer scale of the assaults. The atrocities committed by Hamas and allied groups on 7th of October marked a day of unprecedented violence. There are numerous accounts of deliberate killings, hostage abuse, sexual violence, and desecration of both the living and the dead. Civilians were targeted with calculated and unreserved precision. Victims spanning all ages, from infants to the elderly, were often shot at point-blank range, burned alive, or killed by grenades. The systematic destruction included the deliberate annihilation of entire families in kibbutzim. Elsewhere, children were orphaned as their parents were killed in front of them as they hid. The attackers abducted 251 hostages, including civilian soldiers and corpses from various locations. Hostages endured abuse during this process, including binding and beatings. Children as young as 9 months and elderly people were forcibly removed from their families. Women and girls were particularly vulnerable during the attacks. Reports detailed gang rapes, sexual mutilation, and assaults on both living and deceased victims. There was a pattern across various locations attacked on 7th of October of fully naked or partially naked bodies from the waist down that were recovered, mostly women, with hands tied and shot multiple times, often in the head. This was particularly prevalent at the Nova Festival. The attackers looted homes, destroyed property, and set buildings ablaze, compounding the suffering of survivors. Kibbutzim and neighborhoods were left in ruins, with fires burning for days. Forensic evidence highlighted the widespread use of incendiary weapons and flame accelerants, leaving many homes unrecognizable and further hindering the identification of the dead. Purpose of the report and methodology. The events of 7th of October marked one of the largest terror attacks in history. Hamas-led coordinated assault on Israel resulted in 1182 fatalities and over 4,000 wounded. A further 210 hostages were taken alive and 41 deceased bodies. The latter victims have been included in the total of 1182. In the aftermath of this atrocity, the all-party parliamentary group, UK-Israel, established the 7th October Parliamentary Commission to ensure that events of that day were meticulously documented and permanently memorialized. This report is driven by a single purpose: to chronicle the facts of 7th of October with clarity and precision. By compiling survivor testimonies, eyewitness accounts, first responder narratives, and expert analysis, this project has sought to create an authoritative historical record. This report will serve as an enduring resource for governments, educators, and civil society, safeguarding the truth against denialism and distortion. The parameters of the Commission's work are deliberately focused. It is not within the scope of this project to examine the causes or geopolitical context of the attack, nor is it appropriate for this report to analyze intelligence failure or to critique decisions that were made or not made by the government and the defense establishment of Israel in the lead-up to the attacks or in their reactions on the day. Instead, the Commission is dedicated solely to documenting what happened, detailing the scale and scope of the violence that was perpetrated. The purpose of the report is not to consider the regional wars and instability that followed the 7th of October attacks in Gaza and elsewhere. The events of 7th of October represented not only an unprecedented violation of Israeli sovereignty, but a broader assault felt across the Jewish diaspora, including here in the UK. Even before 2023, there had been an upward trend in anti-Jewish hate. Previously, record highs were caused by specific trigger events, particularly conflicts in the Middle East. However, over the last 10 years, annual reports have marked record-breaking levels of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism in the UK surged dramatically following the 7th of October 2023 attacks on Israel, with 2,699 incidents recorded by the Community Security Trust between October and December, accounting for 66% of all incidents in 2023. Worst single week of anti-Semitism was immediately after the Hamas attack, before any meaningful Israeli response had occurred. In total, 2023 saw 4,103 anti-Semitic incidents reported, an increase of 147 compared to 2022. A November poll revealed that 77% of British Jews felt less safe in the UK, while 89% believed anti-Semitism had risen in the last 5 years, underscoring a significant and growing climate of hostility. This rise was also evident on university campuses, where anti-Semitic incidents more than doubled between 2022 and 2024, increasing by 117%. This report will be introduced into the parliamentary record and distributed widely to educational, governmental, and civil institutions. By preserving these facts for posterity, the Commission seeks to honor the memory of those who died and ensure that the events of 7th of October 2023 are never forgotten. It should also stand as a stark reminder of the cost of extremism. Indeed. All right, methodology is a bit technical, so if you want more on this, check it out inside. This is just technical about the research done and how they did it, how they got their testimonies, who conducted the research, sources for their data, how they classified people, why they used certain terms and not other terms, and so I'm not going to go into it. Glossary, Aliyah, Gaza Envelope, IAF, Israeli Air Force, IDF is the military, Iron Dome, the defensive shield that shoots down rockets. Kibbutz, community settlement. Not settlement in that it's in any contested area, but that it's a settlement within Israel. Kibbutznik, someone who lives in a kibbutz. Kitat konenut, rapid response unit of a village community. Magav, border police. Mamad is the protected space. It has a very thick cement walls and floor and ceiling. to prevent damage caused by rockets specifically. They don't typically lock from the inside, and so they were not really helpful when there was a intrusion, when people actually came in to the communities from outside. Magen David Adom is the red shield of David, like the Red Cross. Merkava, a tank. Migunit are small bomb shelters outside. Moshav, a community. Negev, the south. Nukba, special forces of Hamas. Rav Shatz, security coordinator of kibbutz. RPGs, Shabbat, Simchat Torah, holiday. Tseva Adom, red alert. Yamam is part of the border police. Yamas is also part of the border police. And Zaka are people who help with rapid response and recovery services during mass casualty events and deal with the dead in a respectful way. Thank you for joining us for part 1 of this 7th October Parliamentary Commission Report chaired by Lord Roberts of Belgravia. In this portion, we looked through the foreword, the overview, an introduction, and the glossary. We're going to pick it up next time where we talk about the actual attacks and the timeline. Please join us for the next editions of this review of this very important report about October 7th. It's not easy material to get through, but it is important to get through, and so we're doing it together. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions or want to share how you feel while learning about this subject. Let's stem the tide of denialism that has already begun and learn and educate ourselves on the reality of what occurred in that horrible, horrible terrorist attack, the third worst terrorist attack in history, and the worst terrorist attack in history based on the percentage of people killed to the actual population. Terrible stuff, but thank you again for listening. This is Modern Jubilees, and we'll see you next time.